My name is Tessa Fuller, and I will be talking about prejudice in social groups as well as instrumental learning. So, prejudice refers to the generalized negative evaluation of a social group and influences the way individuals think and feel about members of a group, as well as influencing individuals' behaviors towards members of a group. So, according to Sakara and Van Bavel in 2014, the human brain is specialized for social living. So, belonging to a group or group membership is valued, and often a preference for one's own group emerges. While it can be beneficial to find membership within a group, conflict that arises between groups can have serious consequences, something like genocide, for example. Social categorization refers to the way in which individuals sort others into different social groups based on a generalization of knowledge about certain social groups. So while being able to simplify our social world through generalizations may be useful in some cases, it may also be harmful or contribute to harmful stereotypes, prejudice, and discrimination towards certain groups. According to Amodio and Sakara, there are several neural pathways in the brain that interact and contribute to different types of intergroup biases. For example, the semantic knowledge system, the semantic association system, and instrumental learning system may all work together to inform implicit stereotypes and evaluations. This image here is from Amodio and Sakara 2020 in the review of social biases. And it just sort of gives an overview of the different neural pathways and how they relate to different outcomes. So when an individual comes to identify with a social group, they also tend to favor the in-group over the out-group. According to Amodio and Sakara, instrumental learning refers to the reward association formed as a result of action and feedback. Instrumental learning is the result of direct interactions with others and informs our impressions of individuals and the groups they belong to. So structures related to instrumental learning. Instrumental learning is associated with the striatum structure in the brain, which encompasses the putamen, nucleus accumbens, and the caudate. The nucleus accumbens is involved in reinforcement and attention, and both the putamen and the caudate are involved in movement and associative learning. So, according to Carlson and Burkett, the putamen and caudate are part of the basal ganglia, which takes information from repeated stimuli and behaviors and begins to take over so that the deliberate thinking about steps of certain behaviors is no longer necessary. The involvement of these structures in instrumental learning supports the idea that instrumental learning is action-based and does not necessitate awareness. Amodio and Sakara's review of social neuroscience and prejudice suggests that instrumental associations are flexible and subject to change with new feedback, and that interventions related to reward association may be useful in reducing instrumental learning aspects of prejudice. This image is taken from Physiology of Behavior, the 12th edition, from Carlson and Burkett. This small oval here, this gray oval, is the nucleus accumbens, which is involved in reinforcement and attention. And this image is of the basal ganglia, also taken from Physiology of Behavior by Carlson and Burkett. So it goes over sort of the steps from the transcortical pathways as information is transferred to the basal ganglia. But here, this larger blue oval in the middle is the putamen, and the blue structure over it is the caudate. And as I mentioned previously, these two parts of the brain are related to movement and associative learning. The striatum was found to be important in instrumental learning and is also important in cooperation and competition. In Sakharov and Van Bevel's review of literature related to competition and cooperation between individuals and groups, the striatum was found to be associated with the observation of cooperation and equitable action, as well as action selection based on reward value. The author suggests that while important in cooperative and competitive contexts, the striatum also plays a role in changing social preferences. Interpersonal competition was less likely to elicit a strong us versus them response, whereas intergroup competition is more likely to increase hostility and competitiveness. A preference for equity and cooperation is more likely to be reduced in an us versus them intergroup context. So a pretty light example of this is rivaling sports teams. So if you run into a individual who cheers for a different team than you, things aren't likely to get too hostile or too competitive. Yet if you're at a game with a bunch of your fan base with you and a large number of the rival team's fan base, things are likely to get much more competitive and much more hostile, and people are more likely to take pleasure in the rival team's losses or punishments. Understanding prejudice and intergroup conflict through a neurobiological lens may contribute to an overall better understanding of how to intervene and minimize consequences. Reviews and articles like those of Sakara and Bavels and Amodio and Sakara's emphasize the importance of integrating a neurobiological understanding of prejudice and social biases in addition to social understandings and psychological understandings for a more well-rounded idea of how to intervene. Interactions between the neural networks that inform social biases and related behaviors are important to understand. However, it is also important to understand the impact of social biases on neurobiological outcomes for individuals who have experienced prejudice and discrimination. And this concept will be part of the next portion of our presentation.